Hi guys, sorry. Okay, really quick before we begin chapter 3, Luis asked me what he was supposed to do on the paper, so I thought I would show you an example of the paper I was talking about. Okay, so on the top you can have the question. So I realized that this question's a little different. I wrote who is the most interesting character and why. And the one I gave you is which is the most interesting character and why. Same thing. Okay, so what you could do is you could fold it in half like this. If you want to draw a line down the middle, you can. And you have Tom Sawyer right here, and I gave a little information about who he is or what I know about him right now. And one of the things I know is he gets into a lot of trouble, right? We also have like Huckleberry Finn. And I wrote, he doesn't go to school, he's the town outcast, so he doesn't fit in with anyone. That's just a little bit of information that I have about him. And then below that, I start to find evidence. So anything that gives me insight or lets me know that this person is interesting. So it's anything in the book that you find and you're like, oh, that's interesting about that character. Then you write it down. Okay? So one of the things that I thought was interesting is he got friends to do his chores for Tom Sawyer, right? Like that's pretty impressive. So you write down the thing that's interesting and you give the page number so that you have that for sure. Okay? So that's what you're doing with that. If you have any other questions, let me know. I am leaving this whole one blank because Tom Sawyer is the main character and I'm going to have a lot of things about Tom Sawyer that I can fill in. Same with Huckleberry Finn. Then on the back I can have Becky and Aunt Polly. Okay? So you may use up a few sheets of paper and that's okay. But we need to just find as much evidence as we can about these people and why we think they're interesting. Okay? All right. All right, so we are now on chapter 3. It is called Heartbreak for Tom. So think about it. You think of the heart, which is the corazón, and what is break? So the heart breaks, right? So he's in love with somebody, Becky, right? So maybe she breaks his heart. Tom thought that the lunch recess, Tom thought that the lunch recess would never come. The air in the classroom was utterly dead. Not a breath was stirring. It was the sleepiest of sleepy days. It took all of Tom's strength just to stay awake. His hand wandered into his pocket and he pulled out the tiny matchbox which held the tick he had traded his tooth for. Tom released the creature and watched it crawl along the long, flat desk. Joe Harper, Tom's best friend, sat next to him. Joe, too, was grateful for the diversion of a tick on such a dull Monday. Okay? Joe Harper. So I would write that down. Okay? He's a character that appears again later on, so you can write down Joe. Actually, don't write down Joe. Sorry. I do that a lot to you guys, huh? Don't write down Joe. He's just a small character, so we don't need to worry about it. Tom poked at the tick with a pin, and the creature changed his direction at every poke. Joe took a pin out of his lapel and joined in the sport. In a few minutes, Tom complained that they were interfering with each other, and neither was getting the fullest benefit of the tick. So he put Joe's slate on the desk and drew a line down the middle. One side was to be Tom's territory, and the other side Joe's. So remember, a slate is like a chalkboard, but it's small, like the little whiteboards we use in our class. The poor tick scurried from one tormentor to the other, and the two boys bent their heads over the slate, giving all their attention to the game. It didn't take long before they began to argue, and Tom reached over into Joe's territory and poked the tick with his pin. "Tom, you let him alone," shouted Joe. "Look here, Joe Harper, just whose tick is it anyway?" answered Tom. The boys were so involved in their game that they didn't notice the hush that had come over the class. They didn't realize that Mr. Dobbins had tiptoed towards them and was now standing and watching their game. So Mr. Dobbins is the teacher. We don't need to write him down. Before they knew it, they felt the harsh smacks of the hickory twigs on their shoulders. The punishment ended their game. So remember I told you they used like sticks. The teachers would hit the students when they were being bad. So he just hit them with some sticks. When school was let out for lunch, Becky was waiting for Tom. The two walked off together to a secret place in the yard behind the school. For a while, Tom drew on his slate as Becky, obviously impressed, watched him in silence. After some time, Tom looked up and asked, "Were you ever engaged, Becky?" What is engaged, you guys? So engaged is what happens between two people when they want to get married. People say, "Hey, we're engaged," and they have the ring on their finger. They're not married yet, but they're engaged. So he's asking if this young girl was ever engaged. "I don't know," she answered. "What's it like to be engaged?" "Well, you just tell a boy that you won't love anyone but him ever, and then you kiss. Anyone can do it." So remember, these are kids. So his idea of what engaged is a little different than probably reality. So he's saying all you have to do is say, "I love you," and won't love anyone else, and kiss each other. And you're engaged. At first, Becky hesitated, but Tom explained over and over again the importance of the kiss and the pledge or promise of undying love. When Becky agreed, Tom kissed her. Then he relaxed and told her of the rest of the agreement. "We'll always walk to school together, and at parties you choose me and I choose you. We'll always be together when nobody is looking, that is." So only when people aren't looking are they engaged. They're children, remember. "It's so nice. I never heard of being engaged before," whispered Becky with a sigh. "Oh, it's a lot of fun. Why, me and Amy Lawrence," Becky's wide eyes filled with tears, and Tom realized he had made a terrible mistake. He tried to comfort Becky and explain that he had no feelings for Amy anymore, so he had been engaged before to another girl. So it was basically like he was dating another girl. But Becky would hear none of it. She turned her face to the wall and went on crying. Tom got up and walked around the schoolyard for a while. Then he returned to Becky's side and once again told her that she was his only love, but Becky kept on crying. Tom reached into his pocket for his most important treasure, a brass doorknob. So a doorknob is what opens the door, right? This isn't really a doorknob, but think of that. It's like a doorknob, okay? He passed it to Becky and said, "Please, Becky, won't you take it?" Becky threw the doorknob on the ground. Tom got up and stomped out of the schoolyard. He headed for the hills outside of town and didn't return to school at all that afternoon. Can you imagine just leaving school? It was easier to leave school back then. Becky soon regretted she felt bad about her actions and began looking for Tom everywhere. She called his name over and over, but there was no answer. She had no companions but silence and loneliness, so she sat down to cry again. As the rest of the students filed back into the school, Becky looked hopefully for some sign of Tom, but it was too late. Her heart was broken, and she was sure she had lost him forever. So it's Becky's heart that got broken. Tom's got broken too, but I think they're focusing mainly on Becky. Okay? Now, I want you to think, was there anything in this chapter that made Becky or Tom more interesting to you? For me, so do you remember for yesterday's chapter I said that he feels things strongly. He fell in love so quickly with Becky, right? So this goes with what I was saying yesterday, or in chapter 3, with Tom and how he feels things strongly. This is more evidence that supports that. So, feels strongly. So, we know he already said that he loves her. And now he wants to be engaged to her. So, page 36 to 38. So, engaged to Becky. And pages, sorry, what did I say? 38. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. Yeah, 36 to 30. Okay, so that's what I did. So you don't have to write Tom again. You already have a category for Tom. And if you already wrote feels strongly, then you're good. This is just more evidence that he feels things strongly. Okay? Alright, so that's it for that chapter. If you want to write anything down for Becky, you are more than welcome to. I'm just doing that for Tom right now, okay? Alright, guys. Well done.